everybody. How are you doing this fine Thursday? We are here today to talk a little bit about the Travis Scott Astroworld situation, but in this particular video, we are going to be talking about, as you saw in the thumbnail and the title, Congress is now looking into this tragedy. And as the beginning, it seems, of their investigation, they are inviting Michael Rapino. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but the CEO of Live Nation, who was the event planner of sorts or the event coordinator. They're inviting him to answer a few questions. And so whenever Congress does make a, demand that someone answer questions in this sort of way, a lot of times those letters are made open to the public, as they should be, because Congress works for us. They work for we the people. So let's get into that first. And then after that, I want to kind of do like a little bit of an analysis on how sometimes what may look to be like it's a good thing is perhaps not the best thing after all, or maybe it could be. But we're going to do a little bit of analysis. But first things first, let's just get into actually what I want to do. Let's just look at like a regular news article that actually came up whenever I was doing preliminary research for this, because I want to show y'all what it is that the mainstream media, this is a CNBC article, but I could have chosen from many different, mainstream media sources. So let's get started here with the article. I'm going to share. Here we go. Okay, so this CNBC article, we're not going to read the whole thing. House Committee launches probe into deadly Astroworld Festival. This was published yesterday. So here's the key points. Let's get these 3 bullet points here at the top. Members of the House Oversight Committee, and we're going to read that letter next, said Wednesday, that was yesterday, they are launching a bipartisan investigation into the events that led to 10 deaths at the Astroworld Festival in Houston on November 5th. Then there's a quote here that was written to Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino. Recent reports raise serious concerns about whether your company took adequate steps to ensure the safety of the 50,000 concert goers who attended Astroworld Festival. And then the third key point is, at the festival, which was organized by Live Nation and headlined by rapper Travis Scott, 10 people ranging in age from 9 to 27 were effectively, and y'all can read that part on your own. I'm not going to read it because every time I talk about this case, my video gets, demonetized. Okay. So members of the House Oversight Committee said Wednesday they're launching a bipartisan investigation. In an emailed statement, Live Nation told CNBC that the company will, of course, share information with the committee. So Live Nation is intending upon cooperating with the committee. Safety is core to live events, and Live Nation engages in detailed security planning in coordination with local stakeholders, including law enforcement, fire, and EMT professionals. We are heartbroken by the events at Astroworld, and our deepest sympathies go out to the families and friends of the victims. Shares of Live Nation were up nearly 3% in afternoon trading. Okay, so y'all already know what happened there. So let's get to this letter now. Let's just read it and see what Congress had to actually say to Live Nation. So this letter is dated as of yesterday, and it says, Dear Mr. Rapino, we are writing to request information regarding the tragic events on November 5th, 2021, when a stampede crushed concert goers, that word 10 people, and injuring hundreds more during Astroworld Music Festival. Those who died ranged in age from 9 to 27 years old. Concert attendees have provided firsthand accounts of being crushed within the crowd as it surged toward the stage. Live Nation Entertainment, who's going to be referred to as Live Nation in this letter, was the concert promoter reportedly responsible for planning, staffing, putting up money, securing permits, finding vendors, communicating with local agencies for the Astroworld Festival. Recent reports raise serious concerns about whether your company took adequate steps to ensure the safety of the 50,000 concert goers who attended the festival. For instance, reports indicate that security and medical staff were inexperienced or ill-equipped to deal with mass injuries. Some attendees stated that the placement of barricades made it difficult to escape. Experts have stated that Astroworld Festival organizers failed to heed warning signs. For example, hundreds of fans broke through metal barricades at the same festival in 2019, causing injuries. Just hours before the November 5th, 2021 performance, dozens of fans broke through the entrance at the festival, indicating that organizers may not have been prepared for the crowd that day. According to reports, the main performer took the stage around 9 p.m. That would be Travis Scott. And approximately 20 minutes later, medical staff responded to the first reports of injuries. The police activity log shows that by 9:38 p.m., Houston police officers and firefighters responded to reports of a, quote, mass casualty event. Houston Fire Chief Sam Pena stated that after local law enforcement received the initial reports of people sustaining injuries in the crowd, quote, our people stepped up and immediately went to the producers and told them, hey, people are going down. However, the concert continued until Live Nation stopped the concert at approximately 10:10 p.m. So here's Congress kind of laying out what we've already talked about on this channel, which is like, Travis Scott takes the stage at 9 p.m. 20 minutes later, it's like already mayhem, like people are being crushed, etc., etc. By 9:38, which would have been, about 38 minutes after 9 o'clock, after the show started, the Houston police officers had already called it a mass casualty event, but it was not until 10:10 p.m. that Live Nation actually stopped the concert. So here's Congress laying that out to Live Nation CEO. They go on to say, we are also concerned by reports about Live Nation's conduct following Astroworld Festival. Live Nation and its subsidiary reportedly have withheld pay until part-time employees who worked the festival have signed a revised employment contract, correcting the original version signed prior to the festival that was dated 2018. The revision makes it clear that the contract, which includes a broad provision releasing Live Nation from liability, applies to the 2021 festival. Okay, so now this is something that I hadn't actually heard in the news, and maybe it's out there and I just didn't hear it. But what Congress is saying is, well, we have also gotten reports that you, Live Nation, are withholding pay from your part-time employees who worked the festival until they sign an updated contract, because y'all didn't have the good sense to give them an updated contract whenever you had them sign it the first time. And in this revised contract that Live Nation is trying to get these part-time employees to sign, this new revision, it would make it clear that Live Nation has no liability for anything that happened at this 2021 festival. So it's another, hilarious but very tragic, because the events in this case are not hilarious, but just the actions of lawyers and how little things like little typos and things can actually have huge, profound impacts and implications down the road. Whenever you're typing up a contract, this is how important it is. And in this case, I mean, it's almost like karma in a way. It's like, it looks like the lawyers are acting just like the security and the medical staff and everyone else, sloppy and unprepared. Okay. Let's see. What is the footnote here? This is 11. What to know about the Houston Astroworld tragedy? Let me see. Hold on. However, the concert makes it clear. Okay, so 11 is from a December 17th, 2021 Rolling Stone article that says, promoters to Astroworld employees, promise not to sue us if you want to get paid. Okay, so I have not read that article, and if I had a little more or a little less to cover in this video, I would pull it up. But there's where you can see the reports of Live Nation trying to force people to sign an updated contract before they get paid for working that night. And this is in addition to everything else we've already heard through the media. Okay. The tragedy at Astroworld Festival follows a long line of other tragic events and safety violations involving Live Nation. For example, Live Nation has been fined or sued numerous times over safety issues at previous events, including other incidents involving surging fans or stampedes. In 2011, a stage collapse in Indiana killed 7 and injured 61, And in 2013, a concert staffer in New York suffered brain damage after a forklift crashed into his booth. From 2016 to 2019, Live Nation and its subsidiary Live Nation Worldwide were cited 10 times for safety violations and incurred fines. So they got 10 citations between 2016 and 2019. We are deeply saddened by the deaths that occurred at Astroworld Festival and are committed to investigating what went wrong to inform possible reforms that could prevent future tragedies. Okay, so this is what Congress is saying, and this is where I want y'all to start kind of opening up both sides of your mind, okay? Both sides. Try to have the both sides open type situation here. We are deeply saddened, this is Congress, by the deaths that occurred at the Astroworld Festival, and we are committed to investigating what went wrong to inform possible reforms that could prevent future tragedies. So sirens in my head start to go off when I read a sentence like this, because here you have Congress, threatening to intervene, right? And write laws that would affect future situations like this in general, right? And so from what they're saying is, they're saying we want to do some policies. What are they calling it? Possible reforms, right? This would be federal legislation that would address tragedies like this one. And so in this situation, what they're saying in words is reforms that could help prevent future tragedies. But y'all, anytime we're thinking about legislation, we need to think about how it can apply to other situations and not just the one we are in. Okay, so that's a little foreshadowing primer. Just keep that in mind as we're going through the rest of this. To that end, Congress goes on. We ask that Live Nation Entertainment provide written answers addressing the following topics related to the Astroworld Festival by January 7th, 2022. So they're giving Live Nation until January 7th, so a little less than a month, to provide written answers to the following questions. So what are the questions? Let's start here. This is my first time reading this. Please provide a narrative detailing the roles and responsibilities for Astroworld Festival, including but not limited to venue security, crowd control, mass casualty incident planning, emergency communications, and medical care between Live Nation Entertainment, its subsidiaries, partners, and subcontractors. Okay, so the first thing that Congress is asking for is to provide a narrative telling who had which roles, right? As it pertained to security and crowd control, who had which role in communication, what was the chain of command, right? And we in Congress, we want you to turn over records to us, your private records, which in this case, listen, I don't want y'all to get me wrong. I think that this case does deserve some looking into. I'm not trying to say Congress shouldn't look into it. I just want you to keep both sides, of your mind open until we get to the end of the video, because I have a lot of evidence to show y'all as we go along. Okay. Number 2 question that Congress wants answered is describe any pre-show security assessments, planning, and briefings conducted by Live Nation Entertainment or its partners, subsidiaries, or subcontractors, including any details regarding any safety concerns raised prior to the performance. So they really want to know any communications or security assessments that had to do with what were y'all actually concerned could happen at this show. What were your safety concerns, if any? We want that in writing. Number 3, please provide details regarding Live Nation Entertainment's actions in response to same-day reports of fans breaking through security barriers. Okay, so number 3, Congress is saying they would like to see any details about what Live Nation did on the day of this festival when at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, fans were busting through barricades. So what did y'all do for those 12 whole hours of things getting busted in and breaking down and merch booths getting bombarded and all of what were you doing during that day is what Congress wants to know as number 3. Number 4, what precise time was Live Nation Entertainment first made aware of casualties on the evening of November 5th, and what steps were taken in response to that information? Okay, so exactly what time did Live Nation find out? Congress wants to know. Number 5, what precise time was Live Nation Entertainment first made aware that what law enforcement had declared a mass casualty event. Okay, so number 4 is, when did you know that there was casualties? But number 5 is, at exactly what time did you know that it was declared officially a mass casualty event, right? And what actions then did you take, you being Live Nation Entertainment, between that report and the performance's termination at approximately 10:10 p.m.? So what time did you find out it was a mass casualty event? What time did you find out that that had been declared? And what did you do between that exact moment and 10:10 p.m.? Number 6, please share your assessment of the cause of the stampede and whether it could have been prevented. Okay. Number 7, please address reports that Live Nation has withheld pay from Astroworld employees until they have signed revised employee contracts that release Live Nation from liability. Okay, so they're saying, look, we heard, rumor has it, that y'all aren't giving people their money until they sign these updated contracts. Please address that in writing, what you have to say for yourself. Is it true? Is it not true? Why, when, where, how, etc. Number 8, what steps does Live Nation plan to take to prevent another injury or death at a promoted or held event? In addition, please produce the following documents no later than January 7th, 2022. And the following documents are as follows. Number 1, contracts related to Astroworld Festival security, communications, and medical care. And that's it. Okay, and then they say the committee also requests a briefing on the topics listed above by January 12th, 2022. Please be prepared to address additional concerns regarding Live Nation Entertainment's safety practices, including those related to Astroworld Festival and other events organized by your company. Please confirm your availability for this briefing no later than January 7th, 2022. It's pretty funny how Congress is like, hey, are you available? Like, what are you supposed to say? Like, you can say no, but can you imagine? The Committee on Oversight and Reform is the principal oversight committee of the House of Representatives and has broad authority to investigate any matter at any time under House Rule 10. If you have questions regarding this request, please contact committee staff at blah, 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 blah. Now, when they say if you have questions, I don't think they're talking to us. I think they're talking to Mr. Rapino. Okay, and then that's it. Who signed this? Let's see. Al Green, Carolyn Maloney, James Comer, ranking member, Kevin Brady, and Bill Pasquarel Jr. I bet y'all didn't think you'd be spending your Thursday afternoon reading a letter from Congress, did you? But you never know what you're going to get here. Okay, so now that we've read that, scathing, love it. I think it is, my initial response when I heard about this was good. This is good news. But I never just stop there. I continue to ask questions like, what if it's not? Or why? Do you know what I mean? Like, anytime I see the word bipartisan, I become a little bit suspicious because I don't want to be cynical, but I also have eyes and ears, and I kind of have seen what's been going on in the country and the world in the last few years, and it isn't every day that people just come together from both sides of the political aisle on an issue, right? And so when that happens, I just want to ask myself why, and I want to ask the universe and powers that be and people around me, what is this? So what, we can't come together on anything, okay? So when we come together bipartisan on something, I'm just wondering why, but it does not mean that it's impossible, okay? So don't, I'm not full tinfoil hat. It can happen, but it just prompts me to do a little bit of further investigation. And so that's what I did. So what I did, I'm just walk y'all through my research process. As soon as I read that, I just literally went straight to Yahoo and typed in riot laws in Texas. And you're going to see there's some purple stuff here, but you can kind of start to see a narrative gets formed, right? So the first thing you have up here is Texas penal. Now, okay, real quick. Some of y'all might be wondering, why are you going to Texas? What's Texas have to do with anything? Good question, because Congress is federal and Texas is state. But anything that's done on a federal level is often done at a state level first. There's often these tests, think about fringe things like legalizing certain types of, cannabis or whatever. It starts on state level and kind of states do it. And then it's kind of you can imagine a future where they do it on a national level. And the same with other personal liberty rights, things like that, right? So it doesn't always happen that way, but it can happen that way. And so since this tragedy happened in Astroworld, and all of these Texas officials are involved in it, the first thing that came to my mind was just look up in Texas, local, Houston, that's where it is, right? Okay. So this is what we're looking up. And it's just like, okay, look at these 2021 articles. Texas bill targeting, quote, riots would crack down on the right to, okay, so this is where my sirens really start to go off. Anytime a new bill is being proposed in Congress, the first thing I ask myself, and this is not what you have to do, but the first thing I ask myself with the legal knowledge I have is there any possible way that this law could be used to infringe upon people's constitutional rights? Okay. And I'm going to give y'all a little bonus on this one here, because it doesn't matter if you fall on the left or the right politically in this issue, because this law, we're going to see as we walk through these things today in this video, this law could implicate Black Lives Matter protests. It could also implicate the January 6th, what's being called insurrection. That's also being called a riot. So no matter which side you fall on, no matter how extreme you are, all the way Antifa to, the other side, I ain't even allowed to say that word on YouTube or else I'm going to get canceled off the YouTube. But any way you go, either side of the political spectrum, the powers that be could consider your peaceful assembly, and I'm not saying that the things I just referred to were peaceful assemblies. Those are just examples. I'm just saying, look to the future. We're going to look. I'm going to just foreshadowing. You're going to make your own mind up here. But let's continue to have an open mind about how the media framing this as something that's good, right? We are all in agreement. Astroworld was horrible. It was preventable, avoidable, and it shouldn't have happened. People need to be held accountable. We all agree on that. But a lot of times it's when we all agree on something that people can sneak laws and regulations under that otherwise wouldn't be able to be passed. And now we've actually given up a little bit of our freedoms and our liberties based on the fine print in these bills. Do y'all see where I'm going here? All right. Y'all, it's like you can't say nothing on YouTube. Oh, but I did start my Patreon and I have some stuff up on there. So I'm going to start putting my little more controversial takes over there. So it's linked below if y'all want to see it. Okay. So next thing we're going to look at, I want to show y'all the next thing I looked at. This is like my investigatory process, as it were, right? So I'm like, all right, look at this one. Texas Senate passes anti-riot bill. Shoot, okay, they already passed it. Okay, darn. Well, I hope that it's not something real bad, right? And then I see this, federal judge is denying this man prison. We're not going to read all this stuff. Just I'm kind of doing my little Googling, as one does. And so I really want to get into this one right here, right? Texas bill targeting, quote, riots would crack down on the right to protest, experts say. Now, I don't know what Texas Public Radio is. I don't know if this is a reliable source, but y'all know how I do on this channel. I just go through all the different types of news, and then I try to see if I can ascertain what possibly is actually going on in real life in the midst of all the propaganda we're being fed. Okay. So this is Texas Public Radio, April 23rd of this year, and we have some people protesting in the streets. Looks like it is, in this particular instance, perhaps a Black Lives Matter protest. Look, there's the description below. Black Lives Matter demonstrators marching up the South Freeway, May 29th, 2020. Okay, so we have a freeway blocking, and y'all please keep your opinions about blocking the freeway to yourself on this video and in these comments. Thank you. I'm really trying to have civil discourse here. Thank you very much. Okay. A new bill in the Texas legislature purporting to crack down on, quote, riots. Let me make this bigger for y'all. Would instead stifle people's ability to peacefully protest, experts say. Senate Bill 912, and wouldn't you know, I have that and we're going to look at it next, would penalize someone for participating in a riot, sticking them with the bill for any damage to property, whether the individual demonstrator caused the damage or not. Oh, well, remember that question I asked earlier? Like, hey, whenever you see like Congress coming together in a bipartisan way, or, the state legislature coming together to agree on anything, first thing you need to ask yourself is why, right? It could be suspicious. And look at this. The first thing I ask myself is there any way that they could use this new bill to chip away just that much more of my personal liberties, chip away that much more of our constitutionally protected activity? And in this case, at least according to these experts on this one article, right, we're gathering information for what we're going to ultimately decide, at the end on our own opinions here. But look, there are experts here who are saying, Listen, this bill, they're talking about anti-riot, but it would actually penalize someone for damage to property, and they wouldn't even have to prove that those people caused the damage. It's like guilt by association. And in fact, we actually have a constitutional right to be proven to be innocent until we're proven guilty. But see how this would kind of weasel its way, could possibly be used to weasel its way into making you guilty for something you didn't do, and the state doesn't actually have to even prove you did it. Don't worry, y'all. This isn't my final opinion. It's just a rhetorical question as we go along, right? Eli Page, senior legal advisor with the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law, says Texas law defines riot very broadly. You only need 7 people, Page said. You only need a danger of property damage or injury that the group of 7 people poses. You don't actually even need violence. You don't need destruction. It sort of gives a really expansive discretion to police and prosecutors, aka the state and the government, to determine when a constitutionally protected protest becomes a, quote, riot. And then, y'all, once it's a riot, you're in trouble. The measure is one of dozens of similar bills advancing in state legislators. Look, remember when I told y'all? A lot of times it starts at the state level. If enough states pass it without the citizens causing a riot, no pun intended, then the federal government says, oh, look, they didn't pitch a fit whenever their state governments took this little bit of a right from them. So now we can also do it as big daddy government, right? Because ultimately, wouldn't it be easier for the government if they could control as much of our action as possible? I mean, think about it. If we are always scared of going to jail or being silenced or fired or whatever, we're not going to actually fight back very hard for our constitutional rights if we're scared. I mean, that's what communism is, and that's what fascism is, right? I mean, the worst of the worst on both sides is that. And so, to me, my sirens are going off at this point in this article. Government. Yeah, exactly. So the measure is one of dozens of similar bills that are advancing in state legislators across the country in the wake of last year's Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And so in this particular case, it is being used in the case of seemingly as a response to Black Lives Matter protesters. And so some on the right, or some who don't agree with Black Lives Matter protesters in general, may say that this is a good thing. And you know, if that's your opinion, you're entitled to it. But there's nothing stopping this law from being used against you. There's nothing stopping this law from being used against people on your side of the political aisle and your side of the political spectrum. And then what? You know, then you'll be able to see more clearly, perhaps, that it is actually infringing on everyone's rights when laws like these are passed. And it's like, sometimes it's just not your time to get infringed on, but it's coming. When it comes around, it's coming around. Protests, so this article's from April, broke out across the country last summer after the killings of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd by police. George Floyd's killer, former Minneapolis police, Okay, I don't want to get too much into this because YouTube will censor this video. There are currently more than 90 anti-riot bills in 35 state legislatures across the country, at least twice as many that were introduced in previous periods at the beginning of legislative sessions. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. I really need a siren button on my Stream Deck. This is not good, y'all. Because they're gonna be able to use our fear in the wake of these tragedies and our knee-jerk reaction to say someone's got to do something about this, and we're gonna give away some of our liberties. There's more than 90 as of April, anti-riot bills, and it's easy. Want to know why? Because right now there's riots. Both sides of the government, both sides of the political spectrum. The one side is mad about the BLM protesters. They're calling them Antifa. The one side is mad about the insurrection and we're calling them the insurrectionists. I have an opinion. I'm just not mentioning it, okay? So don't make this seem like I'm trying to make these have both equal on the same side. It doesn't matter what my opinion is. The point is, No matter, you can literally be on the farthest extremes of political disagreements right now as we speak. And these anti-riot bills can be being applied to you and your people. So I know you don't care when it's happening to the other side because you feel like it's a game and you feel like it's ha ha ha, you got yours, and it's a keeping score type of situation. But in this situation, tyranny wins, democracy loses, no matter what side. These laws can have the potential because, as we said here, they're worded so broadly. They can have the potential to come up and infringe upon our rights, our constitutionally protected rights. And we have to make sure when laws like this are getting passed that they are actually narrowly tailored, that they're tailored in such a way that it actually does address the problem, because I am of the opinion that the problem needs to be addressed. But there has to be some other way than these broad laws that just give the government more power to tell us what to do. Do y'all know what I mean? And again, I'm still making my opinion up. We got a couple more links to look at. Okay, so let's see. Okay, there are currently more than 90 anti-riot bills in 35 state legislatures across the country, at least twice as many that were introduced in previous periods at the beginning of the legislative sessions. And we're about to look at Bill 912 from Texas. Don't worry. So give us some examples. A new law in Oklahoma would grant immunity to any driver who unintentionally terminates or injures a protester while attempting to flee, and increases penalties for demonstrators blocking roadways. Okay, so what I think I'm reading here is that if someone ends the life of a protester while they're trying to flee, then they will be granted immunity and they won't have to go to court to prove, that's weird. I don't get that. Increases penalties for people who are blocking roadways. And again, I don't want this to turn into opinions about what y'all think about these specific laws, because I don't have an opinion about this. Is my first time reading this article word for word, okay? I'm just saying to use an expansive mindset to think about ways that it could be used in a way that's not good. If you think these things are good, that's fine. You're allowed your opinion on that. Nobody's going to beat you up over it. But think about ways this could be used in a way that would infringe on the liberties that we have, we the people. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm asking y'all to do here. Florida, meanwhile, passed some of the toughest new restrictions on protests in the country, providing that's Charlie Crist, new protections for police and increasing penalties for violence during demonstrations. And on first glance, that sounds great. But what is violence? Who's defining violence? Because I promise you, y'all, they don't use common sense definitions for the law. They go in and make their own definition of violence, and then that's the new definition. With this wave of bills, Page said, lawmakers have made it pretty clear in their remarks and the text of the bills themselves that they are responding to the protests against racism and police violence. State Senator Dawn Buckingham, Republican Lakeway, sponsored the bill. A spokesman for Buckingham rejected the criticism, saying that the bills would not target any peaceful protest. And again, who's defining peaceful? Because they're never using the common sense definition. They refer to peaceful protest, and it's like as defined in Section Code 4322 AABB Section 5672 fine print footnote 411D element OP. You know what I mean? The bill passed unanimously out of committee on Tuesday and is heading for a vote of the full Senate. 4 anti-riot bills are currently pending in the Texas legislature. SB 912 is the furthest along to the road of passage. Nick Hudson, a strategist with ACLU of Texas, said the effect of such broad legislation is to chill people's willingness to protest. Okay, so we have the ACLU saying the effect of these bills and people not really knowing what is violence, what is a riot, what is a protest, what is, could I go to jail for going to the protest? ACLU's opinion is this is, the broad legislation is being used to chill people's willingness to go out and protest. And no matter which side of it you're on, you can imagine, maybe it's your current political party in power now, but maybe they're not in the next election cycle. And then are you going to be able to protest the way that you would like to and as you are constitutionally protected to? It criminalizes peaceful protesters who are just exercising their First Amendment rights. Okay. So that was that. Okay, so that was just kind of like, remember, I just like clicked on that, whatever. So then another, so now here's the bill. And I just wanted to show you all the website in case you ever want to like look at anything like this, you can look at it. So here's the different versions of the bill, right? Let's see, like as introduced, this is what it looks like. Oh. And, you know, we can read it. It's just like about 2 pages long. And it says relating to increasing the criminal penalty for certain conduct engaged in while participating in a riot and to restitution for property damage resulting from the participating in a riot. Now, on first glance, looks good. I don't want, riot sounds bad. Riot sounds really bad, but let's see what they define as a riot and see if it actually is bad. Maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see. Be it enacted. So this is the introduced version of the bill. So we went to the news. We saw what the media was saying, 2 different law articles. And now let's see what, or 1 article. Now let's see what it actually says, and we can decipher for ourselves what it actually says. Section 4.2.02 Penal Code is amended by amending subsections A and E, adding subsections G and H to read as follows. The first responder has a meaning assigned to it in section 421.095. Okay, so see, look, they're about to use in this legislation the term first responder. And instead of saying, and what is a first responder? Oh, it's a paramedic or a firefighter, whatever, police, whatever. They just said, oh, it has the meaning that is assigned to it in section 4.2, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, okay, well, now we have to go cross-reference wherever in the heck that section is. Let's see, 4.2. This is a first responder. It means a public safety employee, right? All of this whole entire thing is a definition of a first responder, okay? So we have to remember that, keep that in mind. Okay, that's a first responder. Then we have to go back to the bill. Okay, so now we have to, okay, first responder. Every time we see first responder there, we have to remember that all that big old huge thing of that definition just now over there, because it's not common sense. You know what I mean? Riot means, what does a riot mean? Okay, so you started a riot, or you incited a riot, or you participated in a riot. That sounds really bad. But like, let's see what they're actually saying, and let's see if maybe we've actually even done any of these things that could have been a riot, and maybe we have been in a situation and we were not doing no riot, but maybe we could have gotten locked up by the Texas police. You know what I mean? Okay. Riot means the assemblage of 7 or more persons resulting in conduct which creates an immediate danger of damage to property or injury to persons, substantially obstructs law enforcement or other government functions or services, or by force, threat of force, or physical action deprives any person of a legal right to, or disturbs any person in enjoyment of a legal right. Okay, so this is like a lot of things. Like, okay, have I ever done anything where I was in a group of 8 people and I infringed on someone's legal right? Well, I mean, probably, like if we were all walking down the sidewalk, they have a right to walk down the sidewalk. Maybe we were holding them up. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't say they can't use it in that way. And y'all, the first thing that I used to say when I was in law school is, oh, that doesn't even make any common sense. They don't use common sense. If you watched my live from yesterday, you saw that prosecutors are giving each other brake shoes as trophies for putting away someone whose brake pads failed and killed people. Okay, so this isn't a common sense world that these people operate in. Lawyers don't use common sense. They got to go, well, but technically first responder has to have the meaning as assigned to it in 52421.005 government code. And it's like, this is how, like, once your brain gets calcified in this lawyer think, that is how they think. So you cannot presume and assume that anybody's going to be given the benefit of the doubt. Oh, well, if someone's in a riot, then the government will figure it out and they're going to put those people away and all's going to be good. We have this good riot bill. No. Because when you're going out there and protesting against Joe Biden or Donald Trump or pink hats or whatever else y'all want to protest, and you have the right to protest, the next time you're doing that constitutionally protected activity, it might be called a riot and you might go to jail. And then you might have to pay for the police's phony therapy bills. And you might have to do all kinds of things because Travis Scott had a concert and everybody's scared. I mean, just think about all the different times. I'm not even going to give examples because I'm going to be labeled a conspiracy theorist. But think about all the times in your life that you remember being alive. We used to have the freedom to do certain things. Then some tragedy, this mass tragedy happens. Then all of a sudden we give up our freedom to do a lot of things. And then we never get that freedom back. When's the last time you traveled with a 5-ounce container on an airplane? Think about it. It's like y'all got to think whenever you see in the news, Congress looking into, Congress probes, Congress investigates, it could be a good thing. I'm not saying to not think of it as a good thing. I'm saying to remember it could not be a good thing too. And to do like what I did today, kind of go through some of this stuff. Just ask some common sense questions, you know? Could this be used in a way that would infringe upon my rights, for one? Because right now, maybe this looks good because I want Travis Scott and Live Nation to pay. Ha, serve T, got him clocked, whatever. That's all good and fine whenever it's the other side, when it's something you agree with. But you have to look at this very broad language. This could be used against you or me in any way. So let's see what else we have to look at here. Anything else important? So yeah, look. So indeed, they passed the law. And this is Texas Scorecard is the name of this one. Those convicted of rioting would be required to give restitution to property owners for any damage they did. But if you remember this article, they said, yeah, but you only need to put it in danger of property damage or injury. You don't actually need violence. You don't have to actually do the destruction. And they said you don't even have to have actually caused the damage, right? So the way this article is phrasing it, they're saying, well, you're going to owe restitution to property owners for any damage that you caused. But I don't know. It seems like the other article thinks just because you participated in the riot, you might be jointly and severally responsible. Like, what if I'm just like going in my car and a riot sweeps me out? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that could ever happen. And that's the common sense answer. I don't think that could ever happen. There's a lot of people didn't think things could happen and they're sitting in jail for it right now. You know what I mean? Okay, I can't make this article bigger, unfortunately. Almost a year after the nation was engulfed in riots, the Texas Senate unanimously passed a bill that would make it a felony for rioters to assault first responders, which sounds good. That sounds good. That part sounds good. You shouldn't be able to assault a first responder. But again, it kind of makes it like, let me just think about what else is going into this. Seeks to deter violent rioters from hurting first responders and offer restitution to property owners from rioters. And it's like, sometimes they'll just put a good part in a bill just to sneak the bad part in. You know what I mean? Would make it a state jail felony for rioters to knowingly commit or attempt to commit an offense against an individual they knew was a first responder. Someone convicted of participating in a riot would have to make restitution to property owners for any damage they did. It's simple. If you riot and harm first responders, you will go to jail. If you destroy property, you will pay for it. Passage of this bill comes just 2 weeks after Black Lives Matter activists marched in Dallas as the nation prepared itself for the possibility of more riots, depending on the jury verdict of the trial against former police officer Derek Chauvin, who was convicted, blah, blah, blah. I can't read that part on this platform. Other protesters. Okay. So looking at that, that's like, okay, again, it seems based on that news article like it would be a good thing. And that's the trap a lot of us fall into. News article makes it sound good. Never really read the text. Didn't read any other news articles competing with that narrative. So I'm just going to believe that and just move on with my life, because who has time to fact check everything you read? But unfortunately, we have to fact check everything we read because the news skews stuff. We've now read 2 different articles. One that makes it seem like it's a great bill because it passed. One that makes it seem like it's a terrible bill because it infringes on our rights. So we're kind of stuck in the middle. I'm still not really sure what I think. If you have an opinion, comment below. But let's look at this one last thing here. This is so over here on the, let's see, hold on. Maybe I'll press this fiscal notice right here. This is the fiscal notice. It says, the provisions of the bill addressing felony sanctions are the subject of this analysis. The bill would amend various codes as they relate to riot and restitution. Under the provisions of this bill, a riot offense could be punishable as a state jail felony if the actor knowingly committed or attempted to commit certain assaultive offenses. Okay, hold on. What? Certain assaultive offenses? Now we're getting more and more vague. Does that mean flipping somebody off? Because that's protected under the Constitution, whether or not you think it's nice behavior or not. It's not a jailable offense constitutionally. And what you're flipping somebody off, cussing a police officer out, saying a curse word to a police officer, refusing to cooperate. I don't know, what do they mean by certain assaultive offenses? I don't know. Against a person the actor knew was a first responder. Again, knew was a first responder, but they're not using common sense definition. Do y'all remember? We were using some paragraphs long definition. So they're purporting onto a citizen in the middle of a riot type of situation, or perhaps a protest even, that they would know that someone was a first responder as defined by section 401.029 of the Government Code of Texas. Like, what? Under existing statute, the offense of riot is punishable as a Class B misdemeanor. A state jail felony is punishable by confinement in a state jail for a term from 180 days. So no less than 180 days. For what? Cussing out a police officer? That's just not constitutional. And again, we don't know what it is because they don't define certain assaultive offenses at this point. Can be subject to an optional fine not to exceed $10,000. A Class B misdemeanor is punishable by confinement in county jail for a term not to exceed 180 days. So it would, under the provisions of Bill, riot would offense. Under existing statute, the offense is a Class B. So it would increase it from a Class B felony to a Class A felony, which is punishable by a mandatory minimum sentence. And if you watched my video from yesterday about the truck driver, you will understand why mandatory minimum sentences may not always be in the best interest of justice, right? And equitable principles. Enhancing the penalty for an offense is expected to result in additional demands upon the police officers. So we're going to need to spend more money on police due to an increase in the number of individuals placed under supervision in the community or sentenced to a term of confinement. So look, as if we don't have enough people in jail, they're literally saying enhancing the penalty is expected to increase the number of people in jail. They're telling you, hey, we are going to use this law to take away people's freedom. And that's what I was scared of when I first saw Congress saying, oh, we're going to make some reforms. Because are they going to make reforms like this? Are they going to use the Texas model of just passing Texas as something to enforce against us federally? I don't know. I mean, it could be used that way, and that's what starts to make me nervous, because it's all fine and good if it's being used against someone against your political party, but you have to keep an open mind to the future where your party will not always be in charge, and laws will stay in place until they are amended or appealed rather, and it could be used against you. Take your freedom away for peacefully protesting. From fiscal year 2018 to 2020, 359 people were arrested, and fewer than 10 were placed on direct community supervision for the misdemeanor riot offense under existing statute, which could be enhanced to a state jail felony. This analysis assumes implementing the provisions of the bill addressing felony sanctions would not result in a significant impact on state correctional populations or on the demand for state correctional resources. Okay, so I still have an open mind about this. I still don't know what I think about it. But I did want to come on here and just kind of talk with y'all a little bit about how every time we see Congress looks into, right, when you saw this thumbnail, you probably thought, yes, good. And when I saw that Congress was looking into Live Nation, I also thought, yes, good. But I'm just not the type of person, after all I've been through in life, who can just say that must be the end of the investigation. I have to keep my mind open in order to get to the truth, because my God is the truth. Okay, that's who I serve. I serve the truth, and I want to get to the truth. So I will be following this investigation. I will be looking at what Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino did respond back. I do think Congress asked some great questions. I'm not saying that Congress is going to do anything like Texas, right? I'm just saying we have to keep our minds open. We can't make our mind up yet. We don't have enough information. We don't have enough information yet. You know what I mean? I don't have enough information yet to make my mind up. I'm just giving y'all a little bit of insight into like what goes on in my mind, like why I didn't just buy the mainstream media story of what was happening to Britney Spears, and I was right. Why I don't just buy the mainstream media story is because a lot of times you're getting competing stories, and unless you're seeking out competing versions of the story, you're not getting the full story. And even if you are seeking out competing versions of the story, you're not getting the full story. You sometimes do have to go to the bill, you have to read it yourself, you have to keep up with the case, and it's like totally fine to not have your mind made up on every situation as soon as you hear about it. Let's all, me included, like practice just saying like, I haven't really made my mind up on that yet. I'm kind of keeping an open mind on it. I think that would make a happier world for all of us to live in. I really do. Let's try that out if y'all want. Yeah. Yep. Every scary movie comes true. I forgot to switch the chat to live instead of top chat. Oh no. Yeah, so what else is going on? What y'all been doing in the comments? Just listening to me. Okay, well, I don't see any questions. Yeah, Julie, thank you. Yeah, it's all about keeping an open mind, cross-referencing, and like also it's totally fine sometimes to, I mean, listen, Tucker Carlson said something the other day that I agreed with. I mean, even a broken clock. I know a lot of y'all like Tucker, but he's not really my tea personally. But he said like one thing the other day I agreed with, and I was like, well, he's right about that one thing. Like, I guess, you know what I mean? Like, just because you don't like someone, like you can even say that, right? Like, I do not like that person, but they're right about that one thing because the truth is still the truth. Like, some people you don't like are going to be right sometimes. And some people you love are going to be wrong sometimes. You can say, I love her, but she should not have said that. You know what I mean? Like, we can all practice having like a little bit more neuroplasticity, a little bit more of an open mind. Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, exactly. See, Femme Fatale, Tucker isn't for me, but occasionally he says things you agree with. Assault could equal stepping on a first responder's foot in close quarters. Police use assault charges to include something so minor as touching, not standing while being handcuffed. I know, Miss Peaches, they will use this against people in a way. I know they will. In Texas, I already know. A broken clock is still right twice a day. Exactly. Okay, so Lisa G asked, so what do we do about all this? And I think truly what we do, I know this is going to sound, crazy or whatever, but I really have this vision for the future where, myself included, like I'm coming out of like mainstream media brainwash land myself, to be quite honest. Like I just realized that the media could lie. I'm serious. I know that's naive, but I just realized that like very few months ago. So I truly believe what could really help and what we all could really do is just not be quick to judgment on any like headline or even any one article or two or three articles. Like maybe before we like decide how we feel on a thing, we like just take some time and sometimes maybe just never decide and just be open to like moving to and fro with our opinions. Because I do believe that it is that quickness to rush to a decision or a stance on something. And I mean, like psychology studies have shown that once people make their mind up about things, it's very difficult to get us to change our minds. And so I think it's just like knowing that about ourselves, we can hack our own brains and say, okay, little brain, I see you tried to make your mind up, but not yet. We need more info. And it's kind of like retraining ourselves to get out of this social media polarized nightmare that we've been living in and kind of thinking a little more in shades of gray. I know that sounds like, not like it wouldn't really help, but it will, because what we do on the grassroots way on social media trickles up, trickles down, goes across, ripples across to everything and everyone that we are around. The algorithm is tracking, probably the CIA is tracking. Everybody knows. Like if we collectively just stop like rushing to judgment on a thing and then fighting with people on the internet about it, and then instead just think in like shades of gray and think, let me like look a few things up about this and see like how this evolves before I decide how I feel about it. And maybe, some people around you are going to be like, no, you need to make a decision. And just tell them you're not ready to make a decision. You need more time. You know what I mean? I really think that would help. I don't know. Let doubt be your friend. Exactly. Okay. So anyway, I think that's all for now. I have like things to do. Thank you, Thea. I do. Yeah, exactly. I do want to just let y'all know I have chapter 9 of Lynn Spears' Through the Storm uploaded on Patreon, and I will eventually upload it to YouTube. It's not as edited. It's not as high production as the... Are you leaving? You're going to wait? Okay, I'm about to get off. My mom's here visiting, as y'all know. Do you want to come on the camera? Yeah. Say hello to my mom.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
You got to say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So anyway, I have the chapter 9 up. I'm going to put it up on YouTube eventually, but if you want to watch it right now, it's up. And there's like some other like exclusive court documents. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Faxing defamation. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye.